President Trump losing again in court on this issue that has been roiling the Trump administration, its relationship with the judiciary, and the showdown with the Supreme Court. The news here, an appeals court rebuking President Trump and denying its bid to end migrants' legal status while this appeal is underway. This involves Venezuelan migrants, despite a string of court losses in these immigration and deportation issues. The Trump administration continues to press on many ways with its agenda, and at times in apparent defiance of these court orders, which, as we've reported, could put pressure on the Supreme Court to act again. They're preparing reportedly to deport even more migrants under the wartime powers that they've seized, the Alien Enemies Act. Politico reports migrants were actually loaded onto buses today, this afternoon, and there were buses seen arriving at an ICE detention facility. You see it there on the zoom in. So even amidst these court rulings against Trump, there are signs that they may be pressing on. And so that brings us here on this Friday night to an ACLU emergency motion. We've reported on how these different cases work and how the pressure sometimes does push back on the administration. Indeed, Donald Trump himself softening some of his language, if not his actions yet, in this area. So this new request, the breaking news I'm telling you about, is seeking an immediate emergency hearing and ruling on what you just saw, whether what they believe to be buses full of these individuals set for deportation should not be hurried out of the country as others have been, and instead given at least a month notice for the due process rights, which of course matter for any human in the United States, whether you are an American citizen who might think this won't happen to you, but it could, or whether you are a legal resident accused of something else, or in some cases the undocumented and others who might be legally removed. I'm going to read from this new Friday night filing. Plaintiffs, this is the folks affected by this who are being advocated for by the ACLU, learned that the Trump administration has, quote, been giving notices of removal in class members in English only, which don't say how much time they have to contest their removal or even how to do so. In other words, the allegation being not the real due process, which the Supreme Court just said is required and, frankly, is a long-standing precedent. The filing I'm reading to you that's breaking news goes on to say that officers last night told class members, that's just a reference to the affected parties here, these individuals, that they'll be removed within a day. And that expires as early as this afternoon. And upon information and belief, individuals have already been loaded onto buses. Again, that legal terminology there on information and belief is, in an emergency context, they might not have all the evidence or all the pictures and videos, but the lawyers are saying, we think this is happening. And they're asking this judge to say no. And that's against a backdrop where there is evidence and allegations that the Trump administration has already defied this and other judges in these related cases. So this emergency hearing is being held in this hour. Sometimes our breaking news is something happening this moment. Sometimes it's something that's been happening over the course of the afternoon. In this case, part of this breaking story has happened. We have the information and the reporting from Politico on the buses. And part of this breaking news, quite frankly, begins in about 12 minutes. It is going to happen in this emergency hearing. The stakes are high. The pressure is on because the administration is all but clearly seeking a confrontation on these issues. That's why the Attorney General didn't say, as we reported, she didn't say, well, we'll see what we can do or we'll give it time. She said after the Supreme Court asked for the facilitation of the return of Garcia in that other case, she just said he's not coming back. Also breaking news tonight, the ACLU is asking the Supreme Court to block the imminent deportations under these wartime powers. Meanwhile, there are further pieces of evidence. It's not conclusive because we haven't had a full due process hearings, but evidence that cuts against the administration's claims. For example, intelligence suggesting there isn't coordination between the gang here that has been alleged to be the invasion in some of these cases, Tren de Aragua, and the Venezuelan government. Now, that is an alleged link that was discussed as the legal claimed basis for the wartime powers. In other words, the Trump administration said, hey, we think this is a gang working with a country. We're treating it as a wartime invasion. Now, the factual predicate for that is potentially crumbling before our eyes, at least according to this U.S. intelligence assessment, as reported by the Associated Press. On the other hand, I can tell you the Trump administration in court continues to insist that they have these powers, and they believe they'll be vindicated once it's fully argued before the Supreme Court. The tensions are high. The Trump administration continues, as I mentioned, to use the Garcia case to show the Supreme Court who they think is boss, that they think they can get away with this. Now, this may not be the issue that the Trump administration initially thought. Indeed, if you wanted to test wartime powers, you might want to test them in a case where, and these cases do exist, by the way, where there are individuals who have been proven to be violent or dangerous, or who have voluminous criminal records in one or more countries. And yet, this is a case where they literally sent Garcia to the wrong foreign prison. The Maryland father has now become a subject of both national and international intrigue, and people appear to care. There have been days of protests in different parts of the country. Some people saying this is all about human rights, they care about him. Others making the broader point that we've seen judges, including Republican-appointed judges, make, that even if more negative information were to come out about this individual, even if he were moved to some other country other than the U.S., without due process, no one is safe. Now, we've talked about what the Democrats can do. They don't control foreign policy out of the Congress. They have oversight. But when it comes to certain foreign policy and immigration powers, it's up to the president, even when the president is clashing with the courts about how far they can go. But that doesn't mean, through the oversight power I mentioned, that the Democrats have nothing to do or say. And so rather than just holding a hearing or issuing statements, we've seen a different type of engagement and leadership from one Democratic senator, Chris Van Hollen, who went down there not knowing whether he could meet with Garcia, who's up against basically two governments, the executive branch of the United States and El Salvador. But here from Senator Van Hollen's office, you see the photo they've released. They sent out this photo of the meeting they got only because the senator pushed on against the nose and against, basically, like I said, two governments to at least check on the well-being of an individual who the Trump administration admits they mistakenly sent to this prison and who Senator Van Hollen counts as a constituent, which is still meaningful in the United States system of democracy and government. Van Hollen has just returned to the United States, as you may have heard this afternoon, and after this shuttle diplomacy, he spoke out to journalists.
He was traumatized by being at CCOT. His conversation with me was the first communication he'd had with anybody outside a prison since he was abducted. If you deny the constitutional rights of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else.
This president, who is responsible for these policies, also seems aware that he may have to back down, as he did with tariffs, that he may have to retreat, that the Supreme Court may push him farther than that initial facilitate ruling. And so I want you to notice how both things can be true. He is responsible, and no honest reporter can observe this and sort of edit out the administration's leader, Donald Trump. But he also now seems to be softening in case he has to back down further. Take a listen to the new language of a president watching this tough battle.
Well, I'm not involved in it. I'm going to respond by saying you'll have to speak to the lawyers, the DOJ. I've heard many things about him, and we'll have to find out what the truth is.
Yes, we will have to find out what the truth is. That is not the sound, though, of a president or a politician doubling down on some fight that he thinks is going well and confident that he'll win and spiking the football. That is someone who now wants to at least lay down a marker that he's not involved and talk to the lawyers, and this is somebody else's idea. Fact check, the president is involved, and the DOJ is arguing his cases, some of which are so extreme on these immigration matters that they have had to oust different lawyers. They ousted the lawyer Erez Raveni, who didn't argue exactly the extremes that they wanted. So we know that's coming from Donald Trump's policies. He is involved. But now he wants to say, and maybe it's an olive branch in his mind to the Supreme Court to say, there's a way out of this. A Reagan appointee and appeals court judge has warned that the president now risks lawlessness, the perception that that's what he is running at the dawn within the first 100 days of this administration. The courts also have raised concerns about all of this and whether due process will be upheld or not, and that means the Supreme Court may have to do more. We're also learning, and I mentioned this moments ago, and now I'm going to show you what happens when we get U.S. citizens ensnared in policies that the Trump administration claims are only for migrants or gang members, and yet if they don't afford due process, we have no way to confirm any of that. This is a U.S. citizen, American-born. Reports from The Guardian that they were then detained by ICE in Florida under a state federal coordinated effort because they were allegedly falsely accused by the Trump administration of being here illegally. Again, in court, this individual provided reportedly a birth certificate for proof and a social security number. Guardian reports that we haven't independently confirmed it. This is a 20-year-old detained now for 2 days before being released. So 48 hours in prison as an American citizen for something that apparently, according to the Guardian, wasn't true. A state prosecutor claimed the court didn't have jurisdiction over release because the federal authorities, that's Trump's officials, wanted him detained. Now, under public pressure and this reporting, we can show you he's been reunited with his mother after Thursday release. And you can just imagine this is, and I say this quite literally, this is Trump's America, an American citizen snatched up for 2 days, despite a court hearing where a birth certificate showing citizenship was offered, and re-embracing their parent, thankful that they weren't further sent to a foreign prison like others when there have been these mistakes. You cannot have a constitutional democracy if one politician, one president, can do these type of things without due process, flout the rule of law, and very materially take, imprison, and banish human beings.